welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And I'd like to tell all of you that I'm Ted, and I love talking about cards.
Do you, Ted?
I do.
You've been a part of this show now for coming on 2 years, and I didn't know that you love talking about cards as much as you do.
Yeah, well, it probably just dawned on you just now.
It did just dawn on me.
Yeah, well,
whoa.
I'm really glad you had that revelation.
Yes.
It's been truly great.
Right.
And we're gonna bite into this episode. It's gonna, I think, shed some real light on the card we're going to be talking about today.
Probably.
And we will do that as soon as we thank all of our patrons.
I'm going to take all the patrons. I'll take all the patrons here, and I'm going to thank them, and I'm going to read them off in a list. If you want to become a patron of the show, go down here to this address right there. It's covering Ted's head. It's patreon.com/cardtalk2018. Oh, wait, no, it's patreon.com/cardtalk2018. And Ted is, I don't know, Ted reps the Patreon levels very well. So there's even a Patreon level for Ready Teddy level where Ted, you can call Ready Teddy anytime. You can call Ted Ready Teddy anytime. And what, Ted?
I'm not going to be mad about it.
Right. But you should see what happens when you call him and you're not a member of the tier. Then it becomes a problem. But nonetheless, all 42 of our patrons, and I'm going to go into I'm going to read in order of total pledge lifetime, starting with the person who is over the lifetime of their Patreonship has given the most, all the way down to Grant Thompson. Yeah. Okay. Actually, wait. That's weird.
What's weird?
I was gonna put it in order, and then it goes out of order. Anyways, I'm just gonna read it in the order that's given to me right here. So I'm sorry. I thought it was gonna be in a funny order, but it's just in an order. So, anyways, the order goes this week. Thank you to Russ and Phil. Phil has been a supporter since almost the very beginning. I feel like he deserves a special shout out. So Phil, thank you so much for being a patron for such a long time, dedicated to the show. I hope you still listen. I'm pretty sure you still listen because I got an email from you a couple months ago. So and then there's Justin, Jason, Mike, Matt, Dominic, Joe, Joshua, Robert, Daniel, James, Sean, Carl. Carl is the amazing playthrough specialist. He comments and corrects all our playthroughs. So, Carl, thank you so much for that. Kyle, Peter, Joseph, Vardane, David, Brandon, Scott, Lou, Robert, Anders, Chris, Shane, Robert, Valentin, Edmund, Alex, Eric, Reagan, Eric, Moritz, Niall, Tony, Dan, Prince from the Dern's father from Vision of the Palantir fame, so that's good. Grant, Katie, yep, that Grant, that Katie, Micah, and Rachel. So thank you so much for all that you do. I appreciate everything that all our patrons do for the show, and let's talk about the card now that we have taken time to thank all the patrons. Grant, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, as dawn comes upon me, we're going to be doing Don't Take You All, the 2-cost leadership event from Return to Mirkwood. So we're going right back to the first cycle of the game. It has play after shadow cards have been dealt, before attacks have resolved, and it is a combat action. Each player may choose and discard one face-down card from enemies with which he is engaged. From an enemy with which he is engaged.
Okay, so let me just ask a quick question. does that first sentence need to get, and I know that the first cycle is, like they're trying to work all the kinks out and, trying to figure it out, but does that first sentence need to be there?
Probably with the way things have been clarified with the rules, no, because, well, actually, even with the core rules, there is no, like the combat, it's a combat action, right?
Right.
So by that rule, you can only play it in the combat phase during a player action window. And once the combat phase begins, I don't believe there's a window, a player action card window before shadow cards are even dealt.
Right. The first one is right after shadow cards are dealt.
Yeah.
Then you can do stuff. So
by the rules, you technically don't need it on there, but it is nice to have it in case there's plenty of
questions that could be raised if it wasn't there.
Right.
Yeah.
It helps clarify the rules. And like I said, it's not a knock on the game. This was the first cycle.
Right.
We're trying to get all the bugs worked out of the system. Like I highly recommend going back and buying the first cycle before you buy anything else.
Yeah, it's a new game, and it just might not be so obvious, essentially.
So my prediction is Ted is going to love this card way more than me. But Grant, what do you think? Not about who's going to like it more, but what do you think about the card, Dawn Take You All?
I like the idea. I like what it could potentially do. I dislike the application of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could have used it so that each player, the wording could have been better, so each player chooses and discards a face-down shadow card from any enemy in play rather than just enemies engaged with that player. And I think it would see a lot more use. As it is, in multiplayer games, you've generally only got maybe 2 players that's taking an enemy, while the other player's either questing or doesn't have a way to deal with combat. So it's got its uses, and I like the fact that you can discard shadow cards, but I think it would be a little bit better with that slight tweak to the wording.
Okay. Did this card make it into your Ancient Matham series? And do you remember what you did to it if it did?
I can pull it up for you. Just give us a few minutes to find it.
Okay, we'll come back to you when you find it. Ted, tell me why you... Oh, Ted. I love these cards, and show me the way. Tell me a card by any other name, would it play just as sweet? So go ahead.
Yes, it would.
Yes.
Actually, maybe not this card, because I thematically really enjoy the name of the card and then the picture. They get the flavor text on there from Gandalf. At least I think that's.
Yep.
I'm just serving off memory. I should actually pull it up and.
Yeah. The flavor text says, "Dawn take you all."
You all, right? That's
and
exactly
be stoned to you, right?
Yeah.
Gandalf.
So, yeah, it's definitely one of the cards. It's a multiplayer card is where it's strongest, because you get, for the same resource cost, you get more of an effect. It could discard up to 4 shadow cards. Grant made a great point that when you are playing multiplayer, 3 or 4 player, there's going to be at least one person who very likely does not want to have enemies and may not have them at all. So because of that, it's very likely you might not be getting that effect. However, there's going to be certain scenarios that you're playing, especially print-on-demand scenarios, that are really, really tough. And players at some point are going to be forced to at least defend an attack. They may not be trying, maybe be able to kill it, but they're going to they could be stuck with an enemy even though they don't want it. And if you let them discard the shadow card from it, you are going to let them it really help them, because then they can at least take it undefended. It's a very controlled attack at that point.
Right.
Yeah, it loses some impact with, like I said, when I play it in 2 players, like solo, it's not worth the cost. 2-player could be, but I think 3 and 4 players with this card really, really shines. And plus, you can combo it if someone is running Silver Lamp and Gandalf's staff already. The player who has the Silver Lamps out can pick and choose the card that they want because they're going to be face up, which is kind of a neat little trick.
It is.
Yeah, but it's fun to like. Shadow cards are bad.
Shadow cards are bad.
Shadow cards are bad, and it's shadow card control, which leadership has this like theme of shadow card control, right? You have Erkenbrand and Balin as heroes, and this card I think was sort of the beginning of that.
You've also got the Dunedain Watcher.
Yep. Yeah. So you have a couple cards that have this effect, and leadership is all about having some strong multiplayer effects. And I think this is just kind of plays into that theme.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like all the cards that are very strong, not all the cards, of course, but like the cards that I can name off the top of my head that are very good for multiplayer decks come in leadership. So you have like Man the Walls, right? And you have Campfire Tales, and you have this card. Like it just seems like they're all in leadership. And maybe that's like part of the meta of leadership is that it's designed to be better at multiplayers than it is. Back to your original point, not your original point, but one of the points that you made is that, and I wanted to address this because I was asked on the Facebook page at the time that this episode drops, this would have been, a month and a half ago or whatever. But, but from when we're recording this, it was just the other day, somebody was talking about building decks and, what are they missing, playing solo that they would get if they were playing 3 or 4 players. And I think that cards like this are what you miss, but I also think that when you're playing 3 or 4 players, you have the ability to specialize decks a little more. And to your point, Ted, about, there may be a deck that you won't want anybody to engage, like that you don't want anybody to engage with that deck. You're still probably going to have to deal with that at some point with those decks. I think in 3 and 4 player, you can get super specialized decks where you have somebody who is running a support deck, which has like healing and location control and conquest, and like that's what they do, and then they can't defend anything, but because there's a defending person sitting across the table with Baragond and Grimbeer the Old, it doesn't matter. They don't need to do that. But so I think that when you're playing multiplayer, like these are the kinds of cards and fun trick sorts of things that you can do that you just completely miss out playing solo. And I'm okay with that being part of the card pool, that you have cards that are specifically designed for multiplayer. It's just that this card let's compare it to its, one of its cousins, Hasty Stroke. Hasty Stroke is just a much more efficient and better card than this card is in the card pool. But that doesn't mean that this card doesn't have a place in the card pool, because Hasty Stroke only works on me. It doesn't work on everybody. So this is one of those cards that, are you going to be upset if somebody else plays Dawn Take You All? No, you're not going to be upset.
Hasty Stroke will, you can target any shadow card.
Correct.
With it.
But it only helps when I say me,
one player,
one person. Right.
Okay,
yes. I don't mean that that helps just me, but like sometimes you have 8 or 10 enemy when you're playing 4 player, and I have very limited experience playing 4 player, but I've played it and I understand the game enough to know that, it's very real that when you're playing not even an enemy heavy encounters scenario, like you can have 8 or 10 enemies come out, after a little bit. You leave an enemy up in the staging area for the first turn, and then all of a sudden your next turn you're playing 4 player and you get 4 more enemies. Now you have 5 enemies coming down, and the way that optional engagements work versus forced engagements, it's very real that you can have enemies engaged all around the board with you. That's a very real thing that happens. So this card, more than some of the other cards that we talk about on the show, I feel has a very cut out niche for it that gets used. But again, Ted, it's not going to be used in a solo or even 2-player situation, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean I played it 2-player when the card pool was incredibly small.
Right.
When that pack just came out, I slotted I think 2 or 3 into my deck.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that came out in, I don't know, like the 3rd or 4th pack or something like that. So there
It was the 6th pack of the first cycle.
Oh, okay. So it was the final pack, but still, I slotted in right away just to play the new card and see how it worked. And I've included in a couple decks since then. But as we mentioned there, it's stronger multiplayer, and that tends to be where it goes. Because
I mean, it's definitely stronger multiplayer. I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I just wish the wording was slightly more so that people that aren't engaged with an enemy still get the benefit of discarding a shadow if you've got multiple enemies engaged with other players.
Like each player picks a shadow card.
Yeah. And as David asked what the ancient Mathams did with Don't Take You All, we have we've changed it slightly. It's still a combat action. Flip every shadow card in play face up. Each player may choose and discard 1 shadow card.
Woo! That's wild. So then you know, and then you can discard. I'm thinking of like Thardir, where in Karn Doom, when you can have 3 or 4, and then like you can pick. Hey, I'm gonna discard all 4 of your shadow cards right now. And then you can take the shadow cards on the other guys, on the other undead in that, but then you're getting rid of Thardir's shadow cards.
Yeah. But that's the change we made to make it a little bit more viable, even in like just a 2-player game.
I mean, having that knowledge of shadow effects is worth 2 in and of itself. If that card said pay 2 to look at every shadow card in play, that would be forget about discarding it. Wow. That knowledge is great, because then you can figure out who to defend, how to defend, and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Ancient Mathams cards. I mean, I think we've play tested this card a couple of times, and I mean we've just getting to the Heirs of Numenor cycle, so it's been a cycle and a bit on, and we'll be doing a look back once we get round to finishing Heirs of Numenor, to take a look at all the cards we've changed and see if we may need to curb the power a bit on some of these cards, because some of them we could have made their power level a little bit too high to bring it in line with other things.
Right.
But
I mean, go ahead.
I mean, even looking at the base card, even without saying flip all the shadows, I mean, even if you just say each player chooses a shadow card to discard, I think that would have made this card a lot more viable than the way it's worded right now. Mm-hmm. I think the wording on this card currently doesn't do this card as much justice as what it could have had.
Yeah. Does this card fit in a... I know the answer to this, but I just want to see what you guys say. Does this card fit in a particular theme of a deck? Like, if you're going to run Shadow Control, do you put this card in that deck just to control shadows, or do you put it, it only costs 2 in leadership, so it doesn't have to be a mono leadership deck that you run it in. Is there any particular deck type that this card will be more useful than others, or is it I think it's mainly just looking at the scenario, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
No, it's no, it doesn't fit into a specific archetype. I don't think it is helpful in certain scenarios that are focused around really, really bad shadow cards. Karn Doom comes to mind right away. right? The more shadow cards you can get rid of because they don't leave play in that scenario. This card is tremendously valuable in that scenario.
Right.
And there might be, I'm trying to think if there's some other, I think there's another one or two, but yeah, it discards shadow cards, and you can help mitigate some of the risk, especially in scenarios that have big, giant enemies. This is helpful against Smog, and some of the I want to say it's one of the saga quests where Smog gets like a riddle card. He attacks you again.
It's the Burgle card. It's the
Burgle card.
Yeah.
So this is a way to get rid of that shadow card before you even risk it being a Burgle card.
Right.
So a handful of scenarios it's like tech against, and then it's generically good multiplayer, but nothing specific.
Yeah. And that's what I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Ted said there. Yeah. It's good, and it's got its uses, but for me, it's not going to make it into every multiplayer deck because there's other things like Gandalf's Staff, Hasty Stroke.
Both of those are really good solo, and multiplayer. So it's,
Burning Brand,
really good.
Just
Jabire,
because, there's other cards that I think are more useful than
Ballin
than this.
Brand.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I don't mean to keep talking. Yeah, I know. I don't mean to keep talking over you, but I know what you're saying, and I'm just agreeing with you the whole way. I guess no show would be complete if we didn't talk about the artwork a little bit. I'll go first. I love the artwork, but I wish that it represented that moment in the book a little bit more. Maybe if it had like a troll somewhere in it, where this is obviously a call to where Gandalf comes, and I think in the movie he breaks away the you know what I'll do? I'll show that part of the movie right now.
The dawn will take you all.
Who's that?
No idea.
Can we eat him too?
And so you can see in the movie where he breaks away the thing, and then dawn take you all, and like the mountain. I wish that was a little bit more representative, but you can tell that it's obviously early morning. It's got like shimmery stuff. You can see the sun rays. Like it's great art. It's definitely representative of the art of the game.
To me it looked like dawn coming through. It's clear like it's through the forest, possibly Mirkwood, but there's a lot of forests in Middle Earth, so it could be anywhere.
Yeah. So should we ring this guy?
Absolutely.
Grant, what do you think?
Why not?
Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know or may have forgotten, I don't know how you could forget anything about this show, but we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we rank a card on a scale from 1 to 10. Where a 1 is the one card to rule them all, or one of the best cards in the game, and a 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it came. So, Grant, I'll let you go first.
Well, for all the reasons I've stated, it's great multiplayer. The wording could be slightly better, and I'd probably give it a lot higher score if it were. But I'm giving it a 7 rings.
I am going to say that this fulfills a niche that I think is really good for multiplayer. I think other than that, I don't know. Like, we've had this string of cards that I feel like has a place in the card pool, but just I don't play them. Like, we've talked about some of these cards lately where, like I say, the card pool is better for having it, but it's just not a card that I play, whether it's because I don't play, I don't play direct damage, or I don't play hobbits. I play hobbits all the time, but or I don't play multiplayer, like whatever it is, like I just don't play it. So the card pool is better for having this card because it's shadow cancellation for everything. I just don't play it because I don't play multiplayer. And even when I do play multiplayer, I don't think I've included this card in my con decks. So, I have to give it an 8. But I would give it a 9, but I think that its shadow cancellation is always good, and I probably will include this in my convention decks from here on out. But anyways, Ted, what do you got?
Yeah, it's you guys made some good points. It's very nichey, as we discussed. It's not a generic use card, but shadow card control I think is really, really great to have. So I think it's just going to be kind of middle of the road. I'm going to give it a 5 because in multiplayer it really shines, but lets you take some risks on the turns that you need to and gives you that control. So that's my rating.
Well, you're significantly different than Grant and I, Ted. So who's right, who's wrong?
I'm right. You guys are wrong.
Okay, good. As always.
Just letting you know.
Just to let you know, Ted is
all good points. All good points. All good ratings.
Ted is an amazing.
Glad we got a chance.
Ted is an amazing deck builder. I have to get ready. Con of the Rings is coming up soon, and I have to decide if I'm gonna go. I know that it's still a little like people go, people not go, but I have to get.
Are they actually doing it this year?
As of right now, as of recording of this episode, they are. But
right, but it's going to be subject to, of course, essentially what the state of Minnesota rules for the vendor location wanting to do.
Right. Okay. I wasn't sure if they were actually going ahead with Con of the Rings or not.
I think it's global health
tentatively it's scheduled to happen.
Right. Okay.
And it's during its normal first weekend in October, so it'll be interesting.
Yep. Now just 2 weeks or something away from Gen Con.
I know. Gen Con got pushed. So anyways, well, there we have it. That's Dawn Take You All. And so everybody join us again as we talk about more cards from the game. See you next week.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.